here in Australia?
No, I forgot. I was so annoyed. I was editing, right? I was editing, and I'm just like, sweet, because the story was only about 5 or 6 minutes. I was like, geez, I've got to try and fill up, 20 minutes worth of an episode, so it's not just a nothing episode. And so I went off on tangents about Super and I mean, it was relevant. It was relevant. Like, g'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Uneducated Entrepreneurs. Today we have finally got Pete back on. It has been probably 6 weeks. Probably 6 weeks. So if you haven't watched last week's episode, last week we talked about, I'm going to be cutting this into the front probably. Last week we talked about my $3,500 tax bill that I was not expecting.
You got a $3,500 tax bill?
Yeah, that I wasn't expecting. Not this year, last year. Yeah. That was good.
Wait. Yeah.
So clearly Pete hasn't watched last week's episode. For those that don't know who you are, you want to just reintroduce yourself because it's been like forever.
So my name is Peter. I am CEO, owner of a organized disability support company. So we have about, I think it's 60 or 70 employees throughout Southeast Queensland. And yeah, it's pretty intense. It's a lot of work. I'm a dad. Just bought a new house. I'm a dad to a 1-year-old, which is why we record these at random times all the time. So,
yeah.
And nice. It's just been hectic. So the reason I haven't been on recently is just because it's been intense time of the year. So we had tax coming up into financial year. That stuff's a pain in the ass because you got to make sure everything's in line. And you got to do all tax planning. Get a good accountant, guys. That's probably the biggest suggestion I can have. Find someone who's a really good accountant, and they save you lots of money. Even though they might be more expensive, especially if you're running a business. Get a good accountant. I've been through 4 since my company's 3-year existence.
Look, you got to switch and swap as you go. That's exactly it. And as I said last week, Pete will say exactly the same thing. Get a good tax accountant. So I didn't even prompt him for that, and he's just
I didn't know.
He's just like get a good tax accountant. But
you got to find someone good. And you know what though? Don't kick yourself if you get it wrong the first couple of times, because I mean it's just going to happen. Sometimes people can look fantastic and they're shit. Like they're just crap accountants, and you can go over see, here's the thing. We've had a couple that were good, but they were slow. So then we were like, well, we're a really fast paced kind of company. Yeah. Like we're always adapting. We're always changing, especially one of the other things we've been trying to be careful of is because particularly here in Australia, if we've got any international viewers, we're starting to have a resurgence of COVID again. It's actually, we've got more cases now than when we did at our peak originally. So we have to be careful because the disability sector is now under the healthcare sector. So we're just having to make sure we're managing all that appropriately, keeping an eye on that and making sure we've got all appropriate PPE for our staff and as things go along. So it's a nightmare, to be honest, which is why I've been...
Look, the weather is not helping.
No, the weather's been...
Under 10 degrees and 10 degrees one day, 20 the next, and then back down to 6 degrees. It's like, make your mind up, my goodness.
The right way of measuring temperature.
Yeah, Celsius. I mean, if that was Fahrenheit, we would be very cold. So yeah, in Australia, if you're listening from America, we listen to Celsius, not Fahrenheit.
Just like we listen to centimeters, not
the metric, not the imperial.
Not the imperial. I don't know what you guys decided to do over there, but ours makes sense.
Yeah, that's all right. We're not here to pay out the American people. It is interesting though. Since Pete's now moved, his internet quality has diminished quite a bit because he is lagging. So this could be an interesting edit for us.
I actually can't tell that I'm lagging on mine.
Yeah, no, you are. But that's okay. I'm amazing at editing, so that's fine. So, what have you been up to the last 6 weeks? You touched on tax time, moving, being sick.
So what?
Because we usually do. What did you do last week? But it's going to be 6 weeks.
I'll just do a quick run through. We'll do fast. We'll see how quick I can go through it. So bought a house, obviously. So we decided to, and because everyone's talking about the housing market in my personal opinion, this is just my personal opinion, I don't think the housing market's going to go down anytime soon, because there needs to be, for the housing market to decrease, there needs to be more houses on the market than buyers, and that's just not going to happen anytime soon. So I decided
No.
to use equity that I have in one of my other properties in order to purchase a new property. So my wife and I didn't really want to touch any of our savings, and obviously we wanted to have a safety net there. So we ended up buying ourselves a little bit of acreage, having a bit of land. Dan's a bit jealous because I get to walk around, bought a new chainsaw, get to go around cutting down trees, and
Oh, yeah.
it's Dan's dream lifestyle. Hillbilly Dan.
Look, these things happen.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Dan the hillbilly is jealous of. I bought a little bit more acreage, got like I said, a chainsaw, able to cut down trees, do whatever the heck I want with the property, and Dan's still stuck in a rental, not being able to do what he wants.
The next rental we get might be some land, so I'll definitely be getting a chainsaw if there is.
But you can't just cut down trees whenever you want in a rental.
I mean, no, but there could be a bush with a fallen down tree over my fence. You know, like there's options. It's fine.
Yeah, so going back to the stuff that I've done, so yeah, obviously we've bought that property, because my son, he's got a lot of energy, so we needed that space to spend more time outside and being able to do more things. You can just do more when you have acreage.
Yeah.
In the past 6 weeks, we've also, I think I talked about doing the restructure change of me being the CEO within the organisation, and making my wife a director. I can't remember if we mentioned that in one of the previous podcasts, but we just did that for continuity so that people realised that, like Jess was a boss as well. Like even though it's only a title thing and it doesn't actually really change the functioning of the business itself, it has a meaning behind it. It has a respect presence, and it helps with culture within the organisation.
Yeah. Nice.
So we've also started. So then, obviously, we've done that in the last probably 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah.
We're actually looking for a new property for our company to rent out.
For your business, you did mention that.
Yes.
You wanted a real estate to, like, if you're a real estate, feel free to message us. No one did.
Jerks.
That's really sad. No, you're not a jerk. You're busy. You're just busy. That's all. It's fine.
No, I'm calling them jerks. It's fine. It means I love you guys. It's Australian.
Love-hate relationship. Yep.
It's Australian for I love you.
Well, yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're looking for a new property. We're still in the process because there's no point in moving in somewhere and it not being right. So however long that takes is going to be just how long it is. And it's just find the right place, take your time, do your due diligence. So I've been going through the process of looking at properties. We're looking at properties everywhere from like Ipswich to flipping Brisbane to Redlands. Like we're looking kind of everywhere. Yeah, so that's the interesting time. We've just done our tax, so we actually had an interesting period where we were in between two accountants. Like we kind of had, not in between, we kind of had two accountants on at the same time. So the previous accountant, who was really, they were okay, they were just really slow. And they just didn't get back to us in time with things, and it just, they weren't quite the right fit for our organisation. I don't blame them. They're like a little mum and dad kind of accountancy firm, and they deal with a lot of private properties, all of that sort of stuff, rather than organisational business accounting.
Tax. Exactly.
Yeah, tax and accounting. So we've got a new accountant now. They're a lot more expensive. But they've been able to, with a lot of the tax write-offs and different things like that, get our tax down a lot.
Yeah. So you just froze.
All because they're a good tax
it
account.
just like froze for a proper like 30 seconds. I was like, oh no.
So Dan's having trouble with his internet. It's not me.
Look, we can do an internet test right now if you want.
Yeah,
I almost want to do one.
Do you know what? Let's do it. You share your screen and do an internet test. This is such a weird
we'll
side
see
track.
whose is
The problem. Oh, we've also got, while you're getting that up, we've got a new Prime Minister in, which is awesome.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah. Because we were going to talk about the new rules
you can do your
/
speed test now.
legislation. So run speed test. Watch it just rage quit. Oh, it is really rage quitting. It is my internet. Oh no, it's not too bad. Hey,
Oh,
20 megs isn't bad. It's streaming right now. Like it's not bad.
maybe it
Upload
is
could be
mine.
interesting.
All right, end yours now. I know I'll share mine.
Hang on, we got to get the upload because it's the upload that's going to be killing it. So about 5 to 6. Mate. Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if I want to press this button.
You're like, oh no. Dude, yours is decent. Holy.
39.40.
Yeah, wow. That's solid. What's
Thank
your
you.
upload though? Does it do upload?
Yeah, 7. Now it's down to
I don't
3,
know
up to
why
4,
it is rage quitting so much.
7.5, 5.37.
It's just like, I'm going to blame it on my computer. That is all I'm going to do.
It's
Oh,
definitely
what the
not my
heck?
computer. I have a flippin' like $5,000
Oh.
computer that I'm using. So.
Oh, I know. I know it's not your computer. My computer, however, is lagging. So from here on out, I'm going to just apologise in advance if it seems like I'm just sitting there blank because I'm catching up. I'm catching up with what he said. So yeah, apologies for that. Oh, we forgot to say, if you haven't watched last week's episode, last week we talked about, I'm going to be cutting this into the front probably. Last week we talked about my $3,500 tax bill that I was not expecting.
You got a
and how to avoid that.
$3,500 tax bill?
Yeah, that I wasn't expecting. Not this year, last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was good.
Wait. Yeah.
Because clearly Pete hasn't watched last week's episode.
I've got a 1-year-old.
So I'll give you a quick rehash. Basically.
You go for it.
It's fine. So a quick rehash. So basically last year when I was doing my tax, I worked out as between 50 and 60 grand that I'd earned through Uber Eats and mainly Uber Eats really. And I worked out the deductions for it would be anywhere from like 10 to 12 grand. Like that to be able to take. See, my thought was, this is the uneducated side of me coming out, is my thinking was the deductions come out. Like, so you say you earn like 50, 60 and your tax bill is like 8 or 10 grand. It's like, well, the deductions just take off the tax bill.
No.
No.
Oh.
That is not the case.
No,
it goes off your gross. It goes off your gross income, and then they work out the tax.
Do you know, if Dan had spent 5 minutes asking me about tax, I would have been able to tell him all of this.
Look, in my defense, the reason I was so surprised is because previously I'd had a job that paid tax, so then it would be offset from the tax that they've paid. But it turns out the government does not like us not paying any tax during the year. So yeah, I'm well aware of that now. And so then I had the $3,500 tax bill, and I was signed up for PAYG installments, which I have to do every 3 months based off that tax bill. So yeah, that's what we talked about, and then we just sort of talked a little bit about how I'm avoiding that now and writing it all out. And I'm just aware of it as well.
Did you talk about how they've changed our tax brackets here in Australia?
No, I forgot. I was editing, right? I was editing, and I'm just like, sweet, because the story was only about 5 or 6 minutes. I was like, geez, I've got to try and fill up, 20 minutes worth of an episode, so it's not just a nothing episode. And so I went off on tangents about super and I mean, it was relevant. It was relevant because I've talked about a little bit about inflation, and everything else like that. Inflation, super. But I forgot to mention the tax brackets. So feel free to touch in on that.
I want to touch on. I was listening to Graham Stephan in his Happy Hour podcast, and I've been doing a little bit of research into the property market over in the US. man, it is different. It is not the same as here in Australia. Like, it is so much more difficult to keep properties here in Australia as it is in the US.
Right.
Like, it just hurts my head. Like, they're able to lock in interest rates. Like, our max interest rate login, I think, is 3 or 4 years. And they're able to lock it in for long periods of time. We're not able to do that. It's just, I'm like, that just hurts my head. It doesn't make any sense because, I don't know, what happens with inflation? Like, what happens when the interest rates or instinctively are going to go up? Like, there's nothing you can do about it. And our banks wouldn't cop that sort of crap.
No, exactly. And even if you take into account the exchange of the places and stuff, like our places are still more expensive.
Yeah, well, do you know,
for like a 3-bedroom house over in America, you could get one for like 120,
depends on the state.
200, depending where it is, obviously. Depends on the state, but like that's sort of an average. Whereas over here, you're looking at 600,000 to 700,000.
Oh, what did you
like? And yes, it's Australian, but
I'm gonna actually look up the averages. What is it? Did you say a 3-bedroom house?
okay, do it. I think the average like 3-bedroom, 2-bath, like in just a suburbia, is like maybe 200 to 250,000. I could be very wrong. Just going off
that's different.
Okay.
Average home value in Hawaii is 646,000. Average home in California, sounds like Hawaii is very expensive, is 579,000. Average home in Massachusetts, 400,000. It just starts dropping. Where's the list?
And what sort of bedrooms is it?
I don't know. It's just the average prices.
Is that just like a 3-bedroom?
3-bedroom house in every state. Here we go.
It probably would be a 3.
West Virginia, their average house price on a 3-bedroom home is This is as of 2020, so it's a bit old. Is 91,000.
Yeah.
Like, that just hurts my head.
Yeah.
Average of Alabama.
Exactly. Like, the housing market is so.
I think it's just really diverse over there. Like, you can get that place which is 90,000. What state was that again?
Was it Virginia?
Virginia, and then California. The average 3-bedroom home is 646,000. Like,
yeah, and like the thing is like a lot of those higher expensive ones, they're spikes. They're being sold for that much because they're also being used to like offset tax from their like earnings and whatnot. So if they've got like a real estate portfolio, they'll go for a slightly more expensive place and say it's like a business office or whatever, and then that can depreciate and they like get rid of their tax bill.
That doesn't work.
And they just keep doing that.
I don't like negative gearing in Australia because it just doesn't make any sense, right? Because and all these people get concerned about getting pay increases. Like, I don't want to go over 80,000 because then I get into the new tax bracket. I'm like, yeah, but we have a system that you're taxed on that up to that 80,000. You're taxed at a specific
rate. Is it 80,000 now?
Yeah, it's 80,000 now. It's between 80,000 and like 100 or something thousand. Is the new tax bracket. You can look up the new tax brackets.
Nah. Yes, I'm looking at it now. It's like, I don't think it is. I could be very wrong. It's 120, 45 to 120.
Oh, is the new tax bracket?
So, yeah, tax. Yeah. So tax bracket
used to
for
be
22,
80.
23.
There used to be a bracket there at 80.
Oh, it's been a hot minute since it's been 80.
No, it was the
last time it was 80. 2019, 2020.
That's not
37 to 90.
That's not a hot minute.
Yeah, that's 20. That's 2019. It's 2020. That's been up to. So it's been 45 to 120 for the last 3 years.
Yeah. So they decreased the amount of tax brackets that we have in Australia now. Do you know who it actually helps though the most?
I think they just threw them together. The rich people.
Yeah.
The wealthy.
Hey, wealthy.
Exactly.
Although we have got a Labor government in, so I've noticed that a lot of people have pulled out on things.
Yeah. No, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. with everything, because there's even incentives now. Because I half thought about it. Is a digital nomad visa to Bali. You can, if you're a digital nomad, so that's essentially what I do. You can go live over there for 5 years. Like the visa's for 5 years, tax free. And just run your business from there.
Yeah, but
It's like a visa
you've
incentive,
got to
and
build the
everything
business.
is so much
You have
cheaper
to build
over
the
there as
business
well.
over there. You can't have it registered in Australia because if it's a business,
No,
it's
you just got
registered.
to be. I think it goes off your where you live. So your individual tax is like if your residency isn't in Australia, you're not using Australian roads, or like you're not using the government, like you're in a
Be
different
careful
country.
though, because
I could be
I
wrong.
guarantee
I,
where the business is registered is where you're going to have to pay tax to. The government's always going to get money out of you.
I just registered in Bali
Yeah,
then.
just register it in Bali. Don't have it set up
Yeah,
in Australia. So
yeah,
the issue would be is if you're
um,
ABN, because everything
yeah. I mean,
has to go through your ABN, and if that's in Australia, you're going to have to pay business tax.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that was just what I'd heard. That's an incentive that Bali's introduced. I'm like, that could almost be worth. And then obviously I'd have to look more into it, depending on
Matt, you couldn't go. Your
like
partner's
the
allergic
schematics
to
of it.
everything.
Yeah, that's true. That makes it difficult. That's very true. That's okay. But yeah, because even like the rents over there is like $300-400 cheaper, and like it's for a really nice place. Food's cheaper,
Yeah.
and like everything's cheaper, and like it's a good wage and thing for the Balinese, but for Australians, we're like, this is so good.
Not at all. Anyway, but back to the stuff. So that's pretty much what I've done in my business in the
Yeah.
last couple of weeks. It's been more about just trying to settle into the new house, trying to keep an eye on COVID. I've been unwell a couple of times. There's this thing called long COVID, and like influenza in Australia has gone stupid. And then because of all the
Yeah.
restrictions and stuff, it's been so hard because like here's the thing. There's no more restrictions, right? But if you're sick if you test positive to COVID, you have to quarantine for a week, right? Which means you can't go to work, and then it just makes it really. And Australia's still got one of the lowest unemployment rates in its history, which means we're having a lot of trouble finding staff.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are just happy in their jobs now. Well, I don't know if a lot of people are happy in their jobs, but
Happy, they're just mostly just like waiting out the storm potentially.
yeah. And what's going to be really hard is, for particularly our industry, is they've got to have specific cards, like working with disability cards, and the government's taking forever to get those through. So sometimes we're waiting up to 6 months for somebody to get this card, and by that point they've got another job somewhere else. So it's like, like you're like, hang on a second, they need to get these cards in order to work. And also, the government has increased the wages, but they haven't spoken to the.
Which is you were saying that like apparently a lot of the low to middle average sized businesses are now struggling.
Yes, there's a large proportion of business.
I just sent you a message, Pete.
Where?
It's your internet. Riverside is telling me it's your internet.
Where did you send me the message?
I just sent it to your phone.
I didn't get it yet.
Anyways.
I got it.
Oh, it'll come eventually.
Why is it my internet? I've got great internet.
Apparently not. So there's the internet test light. So for those playing along at home, Riverside does not agree with Pete's internet. Oh, it's come back.
Oh,
it's come back. There we go. That's okay. But it's not going to be a problem for the actual recording. It'd be really awkward if we were doing this live. I'd be like, well, excellent.
What were we saying?
Yes. The low to middle, businesses are being shut down because of the
small to medium business owners, obviously not like sole traders or things like that, people with employees. A lot of them are having a ton of trouble, not just because now we've got a worker shortage crisis here in Australia, but also because of the increases in the wages. Like this is like there's a big debate in the US that happens about raising minimum wage. And businesses are like, hey, but if you
Yeah.
want us to survive, and they're like, no, we're going to increase minimum wage, and it all depends on the government that gets in. So, like, we were
Yeah.
already struggling with COVID and not being able to get staff, and then people get sick and then they're out for a week, and then you're continuously struggling with shortages.
Yeah.
And then you get the general population who don't understand because they don't have businesses, and they make complaints and they get angry and they become Karens.
Yeah.
And they're like, why is there no service? Why am I not getting this now? I wanted my food 5 minutes earlier, right? And so they're not understanding that there's like a shortage going, even if, no matter how many times you say it. So businesses are just copying it, and there's so many people that I've personally spoken to. They're like, we don't know how we're going to continue. We don't know if we want to continue. Even the construction industry in Australia, everyone's like, oh, the construction's booming in Australia. And I'm like, well, it's not. Have you seen some of the biggest Australian building companies have gone under?
No. Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's just...
Yeah, I did see that. I was like, wow, okay.
It doesn't make any sense.
There's just shortages. And then if people can't get their stuff done, built when they want it, it's like, well, we're just going to pull building support. And it's like, they physically can't.
Yeah, and there's like... A big thing comes down to staffing shortages again, and there's no staff to be able to get all this stuff. Like, it is becoming crazy, and it's becoming really, really difficult to run businesses. And I mean, it's just just a period, and hopefully we can just get through it. But I genuinely believe, I think I was listening to, I think it was that Sam Graham, Stefan, the what do they call it, Millennial Money podcast, that one of the guys on there was believing that they're going to be in a recession because I think it's 2 negative GDP quarters.
Yeah.
When the GDP shrinks, so when they have 2 negative quarters, means that they're in a recession.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's like one of the I guess symptoms.
Medical
terms, like that's one of the symptoms.
That's what they declare is then in a recession. If there's 2 negative quarters of GDP, and I think the US is going into that. And it's just an interesting time. Like, you were talking to me about it on the phone about one of the reasons why property markets is still going crazy is because hedge funds and different things like that keep buying out all the property. And
exactly.
I was listening to a couple of economists, and they found it fascinating because it looks like we're going into a recession, but house prices keep going up, right? And they're like, it's a really weird... It's a weird thing that doesn't happen like this. Normally house prices start going down as well, and everybody's like, we can't afford it, we can't do this. But no, right now, even if you default on your loan, or you stop being able to pay your loan, you can sell your house, and you're going to have 5 people put in offers for your house anyway. And pay off that debt. Maybe more than that, 10 people, 15 people, 20 people paying off buying that house.
Yeah.
Like, we're struggling with a everything shortage, and it's we just haven't... We kind of put everything on hold with COVID, right? Everything ground to a halt, which means we've got a huge backlog of things now. That's why we have a really high homelessness rate. So here's what I find mind-boggling is we have a homelessness issue with people not being able to get rentals, but yet we have the lowest unemployment rate in Australia's history. Like, hang on, people have jobs and they still can't get houses.
Yeah. Like,
doesn't that hurt your head? Like, you yourself, you're looking for a rental, right? And how many people are turning up to the rentals?
I still haven't had one. Oh, we had one. We had one rock up at Bly Bly. I rocked up. We drove past it during the day before the inspection, and the street was empty. There's no cars around. It's like, oh yeah, fairly quiet neighborhood. Rock up for the inspection. The car is full. The street is full of cars, and they're talking to the real estate lady. She was like, yeah, we had 50 people, registered for the inspection today. I'm like, 50 people. Wow. And, safe to say we just didn't apply for that. Because, small families get, preferential treatment, which is, it's fair enough. I understand why. But we're not even going to bother. That with those numbers, it's you're definitely not going to be up there, and it was gone straight away.
And that's what the rental market is like, right? So now, can you imagine what the purchasing market's like? It's crazy everywhere. It's crazy, particularly in Australia and the US, because they're the 2 areas that I really care about. And it's just gone just nuts. I mean, the house that I bought 2 years ago, I would have got for $450,000. right? And I ended up buying it 2 years later for a lot more than that.
Yeah, which is just the way the market's going at the moment.
And I
Which it's unfortunate, really, for anybody trying to buy or rent.
sorry for all you that get into
No
the
worries.
market before all this happened. Having said that,
that's it.
there is still ways to do it. Like, don't think that it's impossible, right? It's just, it's kind of, you need a,
There's always something you can do.
you need a mix of like your Dave Ramsey and then your Rich Dad Poor Dad. You need to mix both of those guys together. Eat beans and rice. Put your head down, bum up. Build other sources of income, right? So create small businesses or do Uber. So get a full-time job and then go on the weekends and do some Ubering, right? Work your ass off.
Exactly. Literally, referral code will be down below.
Work your ass off.
Just by the way.
Work your absolute ass off while you're young.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you have a family, as soon as you decide to settle down, the other thing is what I found interesting. I was reading an article, and it was talking about people traveling, like our generation, particularly in between the 20 to the 35-year-olds around that age, prioritized travel and experiences over purchasing property and all of that sort of thing, and even having a family, right? So they've prioritized, they want experiences, they want that experiential thing. So I want to go to Bali, I want to go to Europe, I want to go to Canada, I want to go to this, I want to go to that. And so rather than purchasing a property, which is what, if you look at our parents, for example, they went to work. Their goal in mind was to buy a property, buy a house, just buy one house, settle down with a family, and then when their family gets too big for that house, sell that house and buy a bigger house. Right? That was their goal in life.
Yeah, exactly.
Was to do that. Right? But now our generation doesn't do that. And now there's all these 35-year-olds that are having a ton of trouble getting into the market because they wanted those experiences. They wanted the really nice car. They've got a car debt that's $30,000, or they wanted this, they wanted that.
Yeah.
They've gone to uni and they've got this $40,000, $50,000 debt, hex debt. They've got.
Yeah.
Does it feel like I'm seeing your tune?
Side note. Yeah. No. Side note. Sorry. With the hex debt, that has also increased interest. So up until last year, the interest on hex that you'd have to pay was like 0.3%. It's jumped up to 5. Or 3.5%. 5%.
Wait.
And like all the years beforehand.
From 0.3 to 3.5%.
I'm pretty sure something along those lines, yeah. I really should get the exact numbers up. Peak is going to do that now. But it's been a massive spike. I'm like, from paying no interest on your hex to now paying 3 to 5%. I'm like, wow. So that's an added stress that people are now going to have to deal with, because even if you have a 9 to 5, sure, if you earn over I think it's 45 or 47 grand, hex is then paid off from that. But like, it's not going to be much because wages aren't going anywhere near as fast. It's like it's not outpacing inflation. So
it went from
you're going to be paying off small amounts. It's almost not going to be quite as bad as.
They don't call it interest.
Yeah, keep going.
They call it interest free, but they call it an indexation.
What do they call it?
So how much it increases, and it's gone from. Man, this is all over the place. Or if you had a hex deck back in 1998, it went down by 0.1%. Anyway, so it was 0.6. It's now up at 3.9.
Yeah. So that's a big jump.
But in 1990, it was 8%.
Yeah, well, because that was the government it was more of a loan that you would actually have to pay, which is still less than like your variable loans, because they treated. I feel as though they would have treated it more as a personal loan to get your study, whereas now it's like, well, we want you to get an education, go into the workforce.
But education's a worse.
So we'll pay it, and once you earn.
I don't agree with that. I know I'm all over the shop with that. I agree that the information behind it is good. The paper it's written on is not worth it.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's a very touchy subject. But that's just another thing that's gone up. With everything that's happening, it's like, oh, by the way, this is now just increasing. It's like, oh, okay, so this is where the government's going to start pulling
Well, here's
money
the other
from.
thing: is tax rates are going to have to go up to cover all the bills for things.
Yeah.
So, and
Unfortunately.
what'll be interesting is if we have a world war, and then that we'll see how that government deals with it.
You want to be in the right industry when that
What was that?
happens. You're not wrong. I was just saying you want to be in the right industry if that does
Yeah,
happen.
well, they need to do a whole shift in our industry. Our industry is filled with cowboys. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been an interesting time. So the last 6 weeks has been pretty full on for us, and I guess for you guys as well. We've kind of talked about what you've been doing in the last 6 weeks as well, looking for properties and.
Yeah, it's all been happening. I like how we went into a short. This is what's been happening in the last 6 weeks. 30 minutes later.
Well, there's also that 8 minutes that have begun. So
yeah, we're over 40 already. That's fine. I love editing.
Yeah, but you're not gonna have to edit too much. It'll be fine. You guys haven't spoken to me in ages.
Did you ask what I've been up to? I know, that's literally why we spoke for like almost an hour and a half, like the other night. Because I'm like, we actually haven't spoken. Guys, we're okay. We're all right. We've just been busy.
Yeah, it's been pretty hectic. Trying to run a business, and then we decided to buy a new property, so all of our expenses, and then inflation, so everything else has gone up. So like, I went from my mortgage repayments on my place of residence used to be $180 a week. Now my mortgage on my place of residence is like $600 a week, plus then my investment properties then add like another $600, $700 a week, but that's being covered by having people in there. But it's just a nightmare.
No, great.
I'm not even wearing my normal polo shirt.
And I know, that's what I thought. I thought it was a different shirt. I'm like, I think it's a different
Guys,
shirt.
I've changed.
I'm saying, I'll leave it though. I'll leave it.
Black t-shirt instead of a black polo.
Yeah. He moves 30 minutes out of town, and he's now like, he's a different man. He's wearing new clothes.
I think it's because all my polos are in the wash.
Yeah. that doesn't help. Yeah.
So, no, it doesn't. What have you been up to the last week?
But yeah, so did you? Yeah, I was just gonna say, I'm like, did you ask what I was up to? Because I missed it. It froze out. I'm like, he may have asked. Yeah, we've done a lot.
Yeah, my young one's awake. I'm gonna have to end it up.
Right. Well, so we're gonna come back to what I've been up to in the last 6 weeks.
And round 2.
Because. So this will be part A now. We'll I don't know what title I'm going to call it. But we forgot to say, make sure you like, share, subscribe, bell, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, all that fun stuff. Last week's episode, I was just talking about my tax bill. The one before that was Caitlin. I'll have links around the screen. So until next week, guys, we'll come back to what I've been up to and explaining a little bit more about those businesses.
Have kids, guys. They take everything away from what you need to do.
Don't. Oh, like,
kids are old.
Don't do it.
All right.
Alrighty. Well, just have a great week, guys, and we will talk to you next week.
Next time. Bye.
Thanks.